Dozens of countries have agreed to establish a war reparations commission over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The International Claims Commission will assess damage caused by Russia and work out adequate compensation. Some estimates suggest $500 billion may be needed to rebuild Ukraine after the war. The convention setting up the commission was signed in The Hague, where the structure will be based.
More than 30 countries, as well as Ukraine, formally approved the creation of a mechanism to compensate Ukraine for the damage caused by the Russian invasion and the war which followed. While it's not clear where the money will come from, the new commission means Ukraine will be able to seek financial assistance.
Russia will never voluntarily pay for the damage it has done. We already see the attempts to exclude reparations and, in fact, any form of accountability from the potential peace agreement. And this puts a huge responsibility on the international community, including the participants of this International Claims Commission. Together, we must stand up for the victims of this brutal war of aggression. If we do not, more will follow.
The cost of the Russian invasion and the war in Ukraine is estimated to run to hundreds of billions of euros. Critical national infrastructure such as the energy grid have borne the brunt of the Russian onslaught, along with civilian housing. The compensation fund should help Ukraine in the long run. In the meantime, the diplomatic drive to end the war is being stepped up, with European leaders holding talks in Berlin this week and Ukraine willing to give up on NATO membership in exchange for US security guarantees. Speaking in The Hague on Tuesday, Zelenskyy gave this update on the negotiations.
The American partners have received the European reaction. The American side will now contact the Russian side, and after that, there will be a meeting with Ukraine in the United States. I think in the coming days, perhaps a little later. We hope it will be as soon as possible.
Donald Trump believes a peace deal is closer than ever. Zelenskyy, seen here meeting the Dutch King Willem-Alexander, wants any agreement to be tied to compensation, saying Russia, as the aggressor, must be made to pay.
Well, for more on this, we can speak now with William Alberk. He's a former director of NATO's Arms Control Center and now a senior adjunct fellow at the Pacific Forum Research Institute. Thanks for joining us. William, let's start by talking about money in connection with that so-called International Claims Commission for Ukraine. How meaningful is this commission when it's still not clear where the money for any compensation would actually come from?
Well, the International Claims Commission that was agreed to by the Council of Europe is an essential step, but you're right that it's not sufficient to actually fund claims. This provides a legal basis for Ukraine to make claims that must be compensated by the aggressor, in this case, must be compensated by Russia. But the money is going to be the sticking point. As you pointed out in the story, we're talking about more than $500 billion in damage so far. Now, European entities right now hold around $300 billion in Russian assets. There's been some hemming and hawing over whether Europe can use these funds, but I think they can and they should. But that's only a down payment. At least more than 200 billion more will be required. And that's going to have to come from somewhere, whether it's directly from Russia or from donated funds from other countries, we'll see. But right now, the focus is how do we get the Russian money that is already in European hands to legally be used to pay down these necessary reparation costs.
Okay. Meanwhile, there's fresh momentum in the peace talks regarding Ukraine. The focus there is now on how Moscow will respond. What's your assessment of where things stand in these negotiations?
Well, I think it feels like we've been here before. This is one of the cases where we're really going to test whether or not Putin wants to end this war. And there are many, including me, who suspect that he does not want to end this war on any terms other than the maximalist Russian terms that they put forward in those initial plans. I think Putin wants to keep this going. I think he believes that Trump and the United States will eventually weary of the negotiations, and he really wants to press his advantage on the battlefield. I think he's willing to continue this fight. So I think we're a little bit in a Groundhog Day situation where they're going to go back to Russia with very reasonable demands and a path to peace, and Putin's going to break things at the last minute, and we'll be back to square one.
Well, talking about reasonable demands, the statement after Monday's talks here in Berlin spoke about robust security guarantees, which Ukraine needs. What should those guarantees include, in your opinion, if the goal is to prevent Russia from starting another war?
Right. We have a big example of this. In 2014, when Russia invaded Ukraine and seized Crimea illegally, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe put in something called the Special Monitoring Mission. And its mandate was weak, and its ability to respond was weak. The only security guarantees that will matter at all is if Russia is risking war with European states, the United States at best, NATO, if it feels that it is going to be at war with Europe, if it attacks Ukraine again, then I think that guarantee means something. And that's going to require UK, French, German troops on the ground in Ukraine, and not just to patrol around and drive around like the SMM did, to get under fire and to have disputed questions as to who is shooting at them, but with actual robust rules of engagement to defend Ukraine if Russia re-invades. That is the only guarantee that I think Putin cares about, is whether or not he is at war with the West. And so that's going to require the potential sacrifice of European lives to defend Ukraine. We'll see what comes out in the agreement.
Well, Washington is also part of all of this, this discussion on security guarantees. Washington is understood by some to have offered NATO-like security guarantees to Ukraine in these talks that just happened. What do you make of that, and how could Ukraine gain assurance that the U.S. would stand by such a promise?
That's a great question, because I'm not sure that the United States would be willing. A security guarantee means the United States would be willing to go to war with Russia if it attacked Ukraine. I think no matter what the peace deal looks like, unless it's complete surrender by Ukraine, I think Russia will attack again unless they feel that they will be at war. Can the United States really guarantee that it would go to war with Russia over Ukraine? I don't think that promise feels tremendously true right now. I think the best guarantee would be the guarantee of European troops on the ground. The ultimate guarantee would be the actual NATO guarantee. Why are we saying we're going to give them a NATO-like guarantee, not the NATO guarantee? It doesn't make any sense to me. But ultimately, I think if European peacekeepers are on the ground with a real mandate to enforce peace, that's the guarantee that I think Ukraine can live with.
William, good talking with you. That was William Alberk, Senior Adjunct Fellow at the Pacific Forum.
Thank you.